are back with another live episode of Bully Ball on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I am Jason Aponte, joined as always by Steph Sanchez and her hair. Steph, what's going on? We were just having a discussion about your shirt. Do you want to discuss your shirt and the history of it and what year that was and where you were when that happened?
So this is from the 1995 Super Bowl. It doesn't say who won. It's just Chargers, 49ers. That's at the bottom. But yeah, I was 4 years old when that game happened. And so obviously we were just talking about the fact that I don't remember any of the 49ers Super Bowls. I wish I could have because I know there's some really good years. I, on the other hand, have Tom Sula, Tim Rattay, Nolan, all the OGs from back in the day. So you can't not call me a faithful because I started rooting for this team in that time. So
The best part about all this is I want to have a quick conversation before we get into, what's going on with this team and everything. But that's what I always kind of tell people is that the younger 49er fans that weren't there for the glory are the ones that are really like down, right? A lot of younger kids when the 49ers were a dynasty and winning Super Bowls chose the 49ers because they were a dynasty and they were, a Super Bowl team. There's something about the younger fan base that is tough. They've been through a lot. They know nothing but pain. So they really love this team. And what I really want to talk about is this is I only have a memory of the 1995 Super Bowl. I remember watching it, like I was telling you earlier, at a bar in the Bronx with my father. And I mean, obviously, I wasn't old enough to drink, so don't jump to conclusions, people. I was probably, I think, 10 or 11 years old, so relax. But it always kind of harkens back to this conversation for me. Super Bowls that happened before I was alive are things that I'm super happy that my franchise has accomplished, but I don't count and I don't have emotional ties to, right? For example, the New York Yankees have 27 World Series. They have 5. I wasn't alive in 1923. I don't care. I do not care. I don't care what Babe Ruth did. I don't care what Mickey Mantle did. Not that I don't care what Joe Montana did. It's just, how can you ask a fan to be emotionally tied to things that they did not see? So when you ask a younger fan, hey, what's your favorite 49er moment? And they say Cap running over the Packers or, this and this game that doesn't result in a Super Bowl, how can you knock them for that and then say, well, why wouldn't you say Dwight Clark? Well, that was 1981. I wasn't alive. Why would I say that? So I wanted to ask you about that stuff. It's like you can have a respect for what your franchise has done, but you're not emotionally tied to things that happened before you were alive. Like, again, I don't care that Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs. I don't care that Joe DiMaggio had a 56-game hitting streak. I don't care that Roger Maris hit 61 home runs. You know why? I wasn't alive. So I don't count those championships in my mind.
I mean, I still count them, and not everyone's gonna have an emotional attachment to it, like you said. I mean, I think watching the catch, like I get chills, right? Like I can
Right.
feel that. But yeah, I mean, it's just hard when people talk about the nostalgia of that time, that era, and you weren't there. Like, yes, I was alive, but I was 4 years old. I was 3 too. So yeah, I lack that, and that I wish I had that. So I'm hoping that this regime, this team, can get there at some point in my lifetime.
Mm.
I would like to see a Super Bowl.
Well, and the thing is I'm a historian of anything. Well, anything that I like, right? Comics, hip hop, football, baseball, right? Like I understand, I do the history, but at the same time, man, I'm not emotionally tied to them. But anyway, that was a nice little intro. Hey, guys, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we all go live, and make sure that you find the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your audio podcast stuff. There was an actual football game this week. And I sent out a tweet, and I'm going to reiterate it on here just in case you didn't see it. The 49ers may have been in preseason mode, but 49ers Twitter is in peak midseason. Like they're a well-oiled machine right now. I mean, the outright panic, the overreacting to certain things. It's a sight to see, Steph. That's the best way I can put it. What were your thoughts about this game? And then I'll piggyback off of whatever it is that you think.
Well, first, I want to say that my dad sent me that tweet that you tweeted. He doesn't even have Twitter, so
Oh,
I thought
wow.
that
How did
was
he find it?
I don't even know, but I was like, hey,
That's electric.
That's my co-host right there.
That's electric. Look at that, man. That makes me feel so much better.
But it's so true. I mean, the panic, all of that, the overreactions that has already started. It's great to be back. It's great to be back.
We're all the way back.
Overall, I know we're going to get to some of these players and what we thought about their performance. Overall, it's a performance you want to forget, right? But at the same time, it is preseason, so you always take that into account. I also heard, and I know Greg Papa said this too, that the Raiders game planned for this game, and that does make me feel better if that were the case, because it did kind of look like they had a plan going into this game, and they executed it. 49ers, on the other hand, obviously, because it's a preseason game, there's no game planning involved, and so I think we saw that on the field, right? So overall, it's a game you want to forget, but I think there were some positives too, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But much more negatives, I think. But it's preseason, first preseason game, so I'm gonna wait to see what happens in the next one.
My feelings going into this, and not to be a wet blanket, was you weren't going to learn anything about this football team based on this game. You just weren't. When you have 18, 19 positions of your starting offense and defense locked in, nobody's going to be playing in this game. What am I to learn from this game? Nothing, right? Like at this point, it's more about right now just getting through the game healthy and trying to figure out what you have on the back end. I kind of want to start this with the quarterback, but I do want to start this with the offensive line. And I kind of want to start this with a mini rant. For so many people that are so worried about backup offensive linemen, come close. Backup offensive linemen aren't that good for any team. Nobody has good backup offensive linemen. That's why they're backups. And for you to say, well, God forbid, if these guys get hurt, are you planning on all 5 offensive linemen to be injured at the same time?
Jay, I want to... I want to interrupt your rant because I literally tweeted that. I was like, if the 49ers have to play their entire second unit on the offensive line, they're in big trouble. That was the joke. That would literally never happen.
It would literally
everyone in the comments was like, that's true for every team. Congratulations, you missed the joke.
So
go on.
The Kansas City Chiefs literally had to play all 5 of their backups in the Super Bowl and lost. That's like a 1 in a million chance. Now, let's say, for instance, one of these 5 starters misses a game and you have to play one of them. Guess what? That one will be playing with 4 other starters, and Kyle Shanahan will be able to game plan around that and not leave that player on an island and play to their strengths. Guys, come on. Come on. Please, let's use our rationale. So the offensive line doesn't play well because they're backups. Nick Sakel gets pushed around. Jason Poe, for whatever reason everybody wants to see, he might be too little. He might be too little. It's very possible. He's too little to play. But this all kind of ties a little bit into Trey Lance, because I do think that while you can't just say it was all the offensive line, you can't just say it was all Trey either. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle in terms of his performance. Sure, in the first drive, it felt like that first actual sack was all about the offensive line. They literally crowded him. He couldn't even step back, and he got held into a sack. The second part felt like, hey, you had a throw. You've got to rip it right there in that moment. But the idea that this performance, which, you see the stats up here, 10 of 15, 112 yards, touchdown. If you didn't watch the game, you would say, man, Trey Lance was zipping it. Trey Lance was probably crushing it. Well, that's why stats don't tell the story. Watch the film. Watch the game. So when I went back and I watched the All-22, which, God bless us, we have already, I saw some good. I saw some bad. I saw some things that he needs to clear up because, hey, guys, come even closer. He's only played 5 games. It hasn't played in how long? I look at, I'm by myself. I look at the good, the bad, and I look at it like, hey, no, because I think Rob thought I was going to go crazy with the rant. I look at some of the good, I look at some of the bad, and some of that has to be contextualized with how little he's played, how long he's been out. And unfortunately, the good And Double B Studio says, I blame Kyle more, got out coached. I got something to say about that as well, too, but I'll let Steph go and then we'll get to that. So leave this one up, Rob. There is things that he needs to improve on. Unfortunately, he needs reps. And I don't think that this team can give him the reps and development that he deserves, which is unfortunate. We literally just woke up this morning to the Indianapolis Colts saying, we're starting Anthony Richardson. The Carolina Panthers said, we're starting Bryce Young. 3 years ago, Justin Fields could start with the Bears. All of these teams don't have Super Bowl aspirations. So the development process can happen for these young men. It just happens to be unfortunate, the circumstances. What do you think, Steph?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, watching the game live, it was definitely a lot worse than it was watching it back a second time. I do agree with that. And, the offensive line and the quarterback, that's a two-way street. And sacks are a two-way street. I think, again, you could have blamed some on the offensive line. You could have probably blamed a couple on Trey Lance. That's just the nature of it. And, again, it's two-way street. But I think I maybe expected a little too much out of Trey Lance. And maybe it was unfair of me to expect a better performance out of Lance, just based on what you mentioned. He doesn't have a lot of experience under his belt. He is also coming off an injury. And so all those things put together, I mean, that probably makes for some struggles early on. And we did see that as the game went on, he did get more comfortable. That being said, there's a lot of things that I see with Lance that I don't know if he's going to be able to turn around in such short amount of time. I mean, there's hesitation. I think some of that did improve as the game went on, but windows to throw the football in the NFL, they're fleeting, and they fleet very quickly. So that split second thought of, should I make this throw? Window's already closed. So I think we saw that early in the game with Lance. And, I was actually surprised that Kyle Shanahan wasn't as critical as I thought he would be on
Very good sign.
Lance. That's a good sign. And I think it tells you a little bit about how Kyle Shanahan evaluates the position, and certainly process over results. I think and a lot of fans don't always look at it that way. So I think it's good to remember and try to see this from Kyle Shanahan's vantage point, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we think. Mm-hmm. All that matters is what Kyle Shanahan thinks.
Well, the thing is this, and I kind of wanted to talk about the positives, right? The off-schedule stuff, right? Like the little jump throw, right? That might not look like anything, but that was really nice. That's something that you really want to see. But then there were the two throws to Conley from the pocket that he absolutely ripped, that I posted on Twitter from All-22. Like it's a beautiful thing to watch him just rip it. And another positive is, as the game went on, he got more comfortable when the line finally settled down, and Kyle started to get into his bag and give him the easy throws and everything as well too. But I wanted to point something out, because I've seen a lot of Kyle didn't do him any favors with his play calling early on. I would like to present this perspective. When you're in training camp, there's no way to simulate game situations, because anybody who's ever been there, when someone gets beat off the offensive line and they're getting a sack, they just touch Lance on the small of his back, and that signifies sack. But the play goes on, and he's allowed to roll out and still complete the pass. What Kyle Shanahan was doing was asking Trey Lance to work on the things that he needed to be more consistent on in a game situation where guys are trying to attack you. So there's no way to simulate that in practice. The only way to simulate that is against guys who are fighting for their 53-man lives on the other side and are trying to make a name for themselves. He wants you to get to the line. He wants you to be able to diagnose. Okay, what are you looking at? Are they disguising anything, right? Your defense in front of you, that is your team, you've seen it. You understand those things. So this is the thing about practice. When we talk about like, wow, this is what he did in practice, it's like it should be with a bit of grain of salt. And the reason that Brock Purdy is the quarterback one is because he's done things in game situations that it doesn't matter what he's done in practice. So Kyle Shanahan, in my opinion, was asking Trey Lance to operate the way that he wants him to operate and improve on the things he needs to improve on in a game situation. It's not going to look pretty, but that's why it always needs improvement. And for the people that are saying, oh my God, the excuses, the guys never played. What excuses? Like I think we have this idea in our head that Trey Lance has been in the league 3 years, whatever it is, that he's played 3 years in the league. This is actually the exact opposite of Sam Darnold in the entire, like Sam Darnold's played 3 years. Trey Lance has been on the team for 3 years. That doesn't mean he's played for 3 years. So what excuses? What excuses exactly? I don't see this as an excuse more than it is a reason for what you're seeing. You're watching a young man taking his first few snaps. You're watching a young man go through all the motions. You're watching a young man who has not played football in a very long time. I just don't understand it. So I guess this is where we should go. Debunking the national narrative around Trey Lance's debut, Steph. Dan Orlovsky gets on TV and he says, he cannot play at all in Kyle Shanahan's offense. I've seen enough. You've seen enough on what? What have you seen enough on? Who's seen enough? What is enough? 5 games? 6 games? That's enough? So now you know. But yet, there's quarterbacks who struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle, and you're just like, yeah, you know, maybe he could be. I think he can be. But Steph, why is it everyone is so quick to rush to bury this young man after just 5-6 games, and after this one game after he's been out for so long? It is mind-boggling, Steph. And for the people that say, well, Dan Orlovsky's played the game, he knows more than you, he has a more informed opinion than I do. Probably knows a little bit more the X's and O's than I do, but don't get it fucked up. I watch the tape and I go through the X's and O's, and I've learned a lot about concepts. I do my best to learn as best I can. But my God, Steph, that has got to be one of the most ill-informed things, one of the things that I heard that is so far jumping off the bridge talking about him right now. I really don't get it.
I think it's twofold, the opinions that we hear from the national media. On one side, I think it's part of them wanting to confirm their priors. A lot of these guys had the 49ers taking Mac Jones. And because that didn't happen, you know, they're a little irked by that, and they don't want Trey Lance to really pan out. I think another side of that token is they're not emotionally invested in the 49ers and Trey Lance and how he performs. So that being said, they're just looking at the situation very black and white. They don't look at the positives. They don't look at what he could be. I mean, that could be admirable. Like maybe we're a little biased. Maybe we want Trey Lance to do so well that we're really hanging on to like the positives that we see. And so I don't know. I think somewhere in the middle is probably where the truth is on Trey Lance and what he could be. But I think it is unfair to just write him off at the same time. But I think the writing on the wall that we've been seeing, and we've been saying this too, is that we don't see him getting that opportunity in San Francisco. And the reason for that is because it's so clear, it's so evident that he needs reps. He needs those snaps. We saw it in that game. He got better the more snaps that he got. Kyle Shanahan was like, I wish we could have got him a little more plays. Kyle, you're the head coach. Why did you not give him more plays? I hope in the next preseason game, we see a little more of Trey Lance. But anyway, the point being, these preseason games are going to be maybe his last shot with the 49ers to prove that he can stick around, or he should stick around. And I don't know if that is enough time for Trey Lance to prove that in such short amount of time. So he's already behind the 8 ball just based on the position that by no fault of his own, he's been placed in.
Right. And WB Studio says, I'm comparing this team to the Raiders, who did everything right. Sunday starts with coaching. Trey needs to play the whole preseason as QB2. WB Studio, I would love to see Trey play as much. The Raiders aren't going anywhere. They're going to lose 11 and 12 games this year. Like
they hung their banner. They hung their banner.
It's a preseason game.
Win.
I mean,
they're also game planning for preseason games. Like, who does that?
We're going to look back. We're going to look back in week 6 and week 7 and be like, remember when they beat the piss out of the 49ers in the first preseason game, and they're just going to be losing a ton of games. Like, they're just not good. It doesn't really matter at this point. I mean, even their announcers, because I watched the Raiders broadcast, by the way, yell at me all you want. Not a fan of the 49ers broadcast team. So I watched the Raiders broadcast, actually, and Rich Gannon and Matt Millen, they were actually pretty good. But they also had it messed up. Well, these are the guys you're going to see on Sunday. I was like, really? Max Crosby, all these guys, none of them are playing. Like, what? Like, are you guys like at all watching, knowing what you're watching? But for Trey Lance, he needs reps. This team can't give him reps. And that's it. Unfortunately. Is it fair? No. Do I think it's right? No. Is it the reality? Yes. Life isn't fair. Things don't go the way that you want. It's unfortunate. and the young man just needs reps, right? And it's just, I don't understand how you can say, well, you haven't seen any improvement. Didn't play year one, got injured in year two, and now what? We're like he's not gonna play like at all this year unless something happens with Brock. How can a young man improve just sitting? Seriously, I really don't understand that. I'm much of a, there's three ways that people learn. Some people learn by watching. Some people learn by doing. Some people learn by both. I'm a doer. I've got to do it. So if I'm job training and someone's like, showing me something, sure, I might like grasp a little bit of it, but I need to get in there and I need to make mistakes. And I need to get in there and I need to figure it out on my own so I get my own system down and I get to where I need to get to. Takes a lot of people, I'm a fast learner. Takes people, and I don't want to attribute this to playing quarterback because it's the hardest thing to do. I'm a fast learner, but I need to do. And I think obviously the only way that we can know what Trey Lance actually is by doing. And I just don't think we are not going to ever find out this answer. And I think that's so frustrating. So frustrating, man.
And this team, I'm pretty sure they know what they have in Brandon Allen, 30 years old, been in the league for however long he's been. We have in him. He knows how to play the position. Why is he getting reps? Like Sam Darnold, same thing. Like he has a ton of reps under his belt. Actually, I was talking with Jordan about this yesterday. He has about the same sample size as Jimmy Garoppolo, who is a 10-year player. Like that's kind of crazy to think about. But the point is, I mean, Trey Lance needs a rep, so why not give them to him?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Hopefully in these next two preseason games, we see a little more of Lance. I would like to see him have as much of a sample size as we saw from Aiden O'Connell. I mean, look at how much time he had.
They were game planning. They installed a whole game plan. I want to go to this question from Ro. If you could pull that up. Do you think Purdy would have played better than Lance with that same lineup? Lance played with Jason. The whole offense was horrendous outside of Bell. Do I think he would have played better? It's possible. Would I have bet on it? I'm not sure. I think we know that Brock Purdy is a superior processor at this point in his career. Doesn't mean that necessarily would be the case if they had the same amount of college reps and then into what they were doing with the offense one. Like I'd still like to see Trey Lance with the number one offense being able to dump the ball down to Christian McCaffrey, being able to have Trent Williams blocking his blind side. Like that would be really cool. But I don't know if I can really say that, definitively. I think what you saw is obviously Purdy is a lot better at processing. I don't think that's really hard to say. I think he's a little bit better at diagnosing, but it is true that all these things around him weren't exactly ideal, but that's the idea, right? Is it's never going to be ideal. People are going to create pressure. You only have a certain amount of moments to get the ball out. And when you see it, you've got to rip it. You've got to rip it as fast as you can, especially when your offensive line is not blocking well. Kyle in the beginning was calling things that were right there for him. Trey would look at it and miss it. And he just would hold on to the ball a little too long. And that's something that we've kind of seen. It's like, okay, you're not as comfortable just ripping it right there. Maybe Purdy would, maybe he wouldn't, but I would probably put my money on Purdy playing at least a little bit better during certain situations than Lance did, just because he just progressed a little bit further. It doesn't mean that I think that Trey is bad or anything like that. What do you think, Steph?
I think I agree with this just because we've seen that Brock Purdy can get the ball out quickly. He plays very instinctually, and there doesn't seem to be any hesitation within his game. Also, I think as of right now, looking at both Lance and Purdy, I would say Purdy has better pocket awareness and he can escape the pocket a little bit smoother than I've seen from Lance so far. But I think at the end of the day, going back to like process over results and how Kyle Shanahan probably views and evaluates these guys, I think one of the reasons why we see Kyle Shanahan like Brock Purdy so much is because he makes those split-second decisions. He lets it rip. He takes those risks. And I think that's why we're probably seeing a lot of interceptions from Brock Purdy in practice as well, because he takes those risks. And I do want to go back to one of the quotes that Kyle Shanahan had from yesterday talking about Sunday's game. And this was him talking about the interception or near interception play that ended up being the touchdown. He said, quote, "I kind of like seeing him trying to make that play regardless of the result. And obviously we got a little bit lucky. It ended up being a good result. And I wouldn't have been happy if it was a pick, but I can understand what he saw rolling out to the left." And then He went on to say, those are things I want to see more of them, not picks and bad decisions, but just playing a little bit faster, a little more aggressive. So to that point, Kyle just needs to see the process. He needs to know that you see the guy open and you let it rip and then you live with the results, but at least he knows what you're thinking. And so I think for Kyle, that's what he needs to see, but he can't see something that you're not doing. So I think that's been the issue with Lance so far, and he needs to be more aggressive. That's one thing we've been hearing about him for the last couple of years now. And so I think he really needs to take that feedback, and hopefully in the next preseason game, he can let it rip a little more often.
Kyle, I love you, buddy, but I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one. I think that was your perfect example of process and results and why the process was bad and the result can blind you from that. I think that was a throw that needed to be either thrown somewhere else or not put in that position, because if you watch the tape, Conley's running into another defender, right? Like, so do you not see him on the backside and you get rid of it? You throw that ball, but for all intents and purposes should have been intercepted, and it ends up being a touchdown. If you're looking at the play itself, if you're looking at the result, whoa, he threw a touchdown pass to Ross Dwelly. Let's say you didn't watch the game. I don't like that throw at all. I really don't. Going to your left, like sliding and then just trying to come back over the middle like that when you've got guys who are watching your eyes and everything. And, that's another thing that Trey was kind of doing. I mean, when he sees the first read and it's open, he can rip it, and he can get it there. But that's the thing, is everybody sees where you're looking. So, Kyle, sure, you're the genius. I'm just the idiot with the Spider-Man stuff behind me. I get it. I don't agree that was a good process. Like, I don't. And that's your perfect example of process over results. You can do everything right, and it can end up being an interception, a la the ball that bounced off Ronnie Bell's chest, right? It was a beautiful throw. Brandon Allen ripped that thing in there. Okay, interception. Your result's bad. You can have a result like a touchdown, and you can say the process was all bad. I just think, again, we have to all start watching the games a lot to understand exactly what's going on. I understand not everybody's going to want to know X's and O's. What's the concept? What's the progression? What's the read? I understand all that. You don't have to, but I think you can see anybody who has any sort of baseline football knowledge. You can say at times that wasn't exactly what he should have been doing there. That didn't look good. And like you said, not only do the lanes close when you have pass rushers, the lanes close even faster when you have secondary members out there. So, I mean, Kyle may have liked the process. I'm glad to hear that he didn't rip him, because I was just waiting for Kyle to just go crazy in the press conference on him. But to hear that he has said some nice things about him. So, yeah, I just, look, for me, the kid just needs to play. That's all. I don't want to hear about excuses. How can you make excuses for a kid who's never played? I don't understand. Nobody learns by sitting. Nobody. I've never seen it happen, right? We're going to find out what Jordan Love is this year, but that he didn't learn from sitting, right? Like, he's just now finally getting to get the reins of the team, and we're going to find out. I just find it funny that people are like, oh, he's been with the team this long. He's played less games than like Kyle Juszczyk at quarterback at this point, right? Like, I don't get it, man, at this point. So Ink Talk TV says, I think that game was more of who makes the 53, 100%. Do you think that Kyle is protecting Purdy from national criticism, and that's why he didn't play? What do you think, Steph?
No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, we barely heard yesterday, Monday, that Purdy no longer has any limitations. He can practice 3 days in a row. So I think, for one, it's partially because they know that Brock Purdy is the starter, so he doesn't need these reps. You got 3 other guys in this room that you need to give reps to. Why add another person to that? It's hard enough getting Lance reps, right? So adding Purdy to that mix is, I think, unnecessary, just based on what he was able to do last year with limited reps in practice and, scout team, whatever he was doing before he got some game action. So I think they think that Purdy's going to be all right. And I don't think they think that there would be any national criticism on Brock Purdy. I think they believe in what he can do. And I know there's a lot of talk about the Purdy interceptions in practice. If it makes you guys feel any better, he was doing the same thing in last year's camp. I mean, I think he just tries things he probably
wait a minute. Hold on, Steph.
We've mentioned that so many times. Like, I didn't think Purdy was a good
I was told Purdy was tearing it up at training camp. I was told Purdy was making it so hard last year for everybody to keep him off the team. He obviously looked like the guy. They knew what they had. Shut up. He did not.
He didn't look good. He didn't look
No,
good, but
he would barely get
so I
1 or
bring
2
this
or
up
3
all the
reps.
time, though. I bring this up all the time, though, because I think it's a perfect example, again, of process over results because, or like clearly the 49ers evaluate the quarterback position differently than we do because me and Jay were over here like, man, this Purdy guy sucks, man. Like,
Dude, he threw the first
throwing
interception of camp.
interceptions.
He threw the first interception of camp. He
was.
threw a deep ball that died halfway there, and someone intercepted. Like, I'm just.
He was, but look what he did in games. So,
But that's
like,
the thing.
people call him
Practice
a
in
gamer.
games.
People call him a gamer, and it's true. He's not a great practice quarterback. So I think you don't really need to see him in these preseason games. And I think the 49ers trust that he'll be fine in week 1. That's going to be a tough game in week 1. I would like to see him get some run, before then. So we'll see if he does get, at least a series, maybe in the third, second preseason. Who knows? I don't know what their thinking is with Purdy right now. But no, I don't think they were trying to save him any criticism.
No, I think it was all part of the plan because he got cleared. Now he can throw every single day. Not really too worried about it. But look, I mean, to kind of push back on, I don't know who would say that Brock Purdy was good last preseason, last training camp. There would be days where he would get 1 or 2 or 3 reps. That's it. That is it. And they would literally get Trey right back on the field because who needed the reps? The starting quarterback. And for all the people that were like, oh, they knew what they had with Brock Purdy. Yeah. Then why bring back Jimmy? You could have just kept Purdy and just kept Lance if you felt so happy for him, or you were just like, oh, we're so happy. What happened?
I don't think they knew they had all that with Brock Purdy.
But that's
potential, but I don't think they knew he was going to.
That's what people tell me all the time. Well, in training camp, he tore it up. Really? Were you there? No, because I was there and he didn't. He just did not. He was not great. So that's my thing. It's like, oh, they always knew what they had, or they knew he was a guy. How did they know he was a guy when the guy wasn't even playing well in those games? Now, what Purdy did is he played well in the preseason. He made throws in Minnesota. He made throws in the Texans game, which made it very hard for them to get rid of him. And that's the part, right? We're literally going back to practice. How do you weigh practices? How do you weigh games? The reason that Brock Purdy deserves to be the quarterback 1 going into the season is because what he has done in games. Mm-hmm. But the idea that he was just lighting it up all training camp, I want to stomp that out. I want to stomp that out right now. Chris Bean, he didn't beat out Nate Sudfeld. Nate Sudfeld took way more reps than him. And when they brought back Jimmy Garoppolo, Nate Sudfeld was somebody that they were able to let go, and they just put Brock Purdy on the practice squad.
Yeah, that was more of a roster like
Sudfeld had consecutive days where he was miles ahead of Brock Purdy, miles ahead of him. It wasn't that they beat him out. When Jimmy Garoppolo signs and he's your backup, Jimmy Garoppolo's not going on the practice squad. He goes as the number 2, and then Brock Purdy goes on the practice squad. They cut.
We like Brock, by the way. I don't want to make it seem like we think Brock is terrible.
They cut a fully paid Nate
Sudfeld. Not a great practice quarterback.
They cut a fully paid Nate Sudfeld and kept Purdy because they didn't want to risk him clearing waivers. No, they signed Jimmy Garoppolo, and Nate Sudfeld was easy to cut because it was only $1 million or whatever, $2 million, same thing. And then you keep Purdy on the practice squad because you wanted to hold on to him. Brock Purdy did not outperform Nate Sudfeld last year. Circumstances changed when Jimmy Garoppolo showed back. That's it. When Jimmy Garoppolo showed back up, it made Nate Sudfeld absolutely expendable. Do not get it twisted if you believe that Brock Purdy outplayed Nate Sudfeld, because he didn't. Some of the better throws, even including Trey Lance from training camp last year, were from Nate Sudfeld. Okay. Steph, let's talk about this game a little bit more. Let's talk positives.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure. Are there positives?
No.
What
did you think about Ambry Thomas?
Ambry Thomas is a positive. Thank you for starting there, because that's exactly where I wanted to go with this. Look, I feel kind of bad because we kind of think about like Ambry Thomas as an afterthought, and we think about him as somebody who probably wasn't going to make this team. But God, you've got to give the kid credit, man. The same thing that I say about Trey Lance is the same thing that every person that's on here that's trying to fight for a 53-man roster is. Anytime you step on the field, whether it's practice or preseason, you've got to take your opportunity and seize it. And Ambry Thomas did that. And I'm very shocked at that. And it was in coverage. He also helped Kerry Hyder stop that 4th down. Whether he becomes a part of the rotation or becomes the number 3 corner, I'm impressed with him getting off the mat, like the literal mat. Like, no one believed that he was going to make this team. And it's just, I'm shocked that this young man played as fast as he did, and it was really nice to see. And this is coming from somebody who hasn't really had many nice things to say about Ambry Thomas. That was really my biggest positive. But besides him and Ronnie Bell, I mean, it would probably be Ambry Thomas, man, because of the situation surrounding him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it was last week that I spoke about it, right? And Ambry Thomas and how Matt Mayoko interviewed him and how I felt like, hey, maybe he might turn a corner. And I do think the 49ers still believe in him. And so I think there's still room for him to make this roster. And based on how he played yesterday, I think he has a very good chance of doing that. And yeah, it was in coverage and it was in run support as well. So he was kind of contributing in a lot of different ways. And I think that's exactly what you want to see out of someone. He has the talent. I think last year was just a lot of confidence issues. It was a lot of, I mean, he said it being behind the eight ball coming into camp, gaining nearly 20 pounds at bad weight, or was it losing? It was losing 20 pounds ahead of last year's camp. And, so he got behind and was never really able to regain his footing on that season. And so going into this year now, and we also talked about, Steve Wilkes and his contributions to the secondary, how he can help some of these younger players take that next step in their careers. I think Ambry Thomas is someone who's going to benefit from that a lot. And I think what we saw in that preseason game is a product of that. So hopefully he could keep it going. But as of right now, I feel very encouraged by what I saw from Ambry Thomas. So I know, like you said, we've been very critical of Ambry Thomas. I think it was warranted at that time. That being said, I think we always preach being able to change your opinion presented with new information. And we got new information from Ambry Thomas in that game on Sunday. He looked good. I think he should make this roster. Right. So, but another positive that you mentioned, Jay, was Ronnie Bell. I thought Ronnie Bell looked good. And we were talking about Ray McLeod, since he's going to be out for an extended period of time. That makes way for Ronnie Bell to make this roster and fight for that last spot for these wide receivers. And I think based on what I saw, he looks ready to do that. I mean, maybe one of his best catch was the pass from Sam Darnold. He did have that, drop that turned into the interception. But all in all, I think he showed that he's ready. The lights aren't too bright for him. And he was reliable for these guys, all the quarterbacks. So I liked what I saw from Ronnie Bell. Hope we can see more. Can I do one negative?
Go. And I think I know where you're going with this.
And maybe I expected too much from Javon Kinlaw too.
Yeah.
But just based on, but dude, he was killing it in camp. He was doing really well in camp. He was getting pushed around. I was like, who is this guy? This cannot be the same guy who was wearing the do-rag and the sunglasses in practice, who was like, had a quick get off and looked explosive. I did not see any of that. I don't know what happened.
It looked very much like the guy in the NFC Championship game. He just, every time I saw 99, he was 5 yards away off of the line of scrimmage. And I'm just like, no, man, please, like, don't do this again. Unfortunately.
He's healthy.
He is. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is. Is it a matter of technique? We know it's not physical build. The man is like literally built like a Greek mythology, character. Like, yeah, that's a big negative, man. It really is, especially with the way that everyone was talking about it. He's healthy. He's lost weight. He's got the pressure off the knee, man. It does not look good, man. He just continued to get pushed back and forth. And it's like, man, really all you really need from Kinlaw is to just occupy bodies, stay upright, like hold those gaps. So maybe if he can't make the tackle, he's got a guy, two guys on him, he goes somewhere else and someone else is able to make the play. It's unfortunate, man. It is just one game. But it is a little bit concerning to see that, especially against the second team offensive line. Back to Ronnie Bell, though, man. Obviously with Ray McLeod's injury, this opens up a lane for somebody to play. And I think Ronnie Bell is, bursting through that door right now. And Ricky Williams says, we need to trade for a D-line, O-line impact player. Skill players are nice and nothing to worry about, but I find it hard to believe we're going to get past the Eagles or even Cowboys with this current O-line, D-line. Ricky, I understand the sentiment because you want impact players everywhere. But to be fair, I haven't seen the first team offensive line or defensive line, and Nick Bosa's still not in camp, so I'm not necessarily sure that I feel this way. What you're watching are guys that are going to rotate with 3 other guys that are going to be starting. So if you see Javon Kinlaw, it won't be Kinlaw, Hyder, Kevin Gibbons all together at the same time. I think that's a slight overreaction, but I understand the sentiment a little bit when what you're talking about.
I agree. I'm not worried about the trenches. I mean, that's usually one of the things that with game planning that does improve. So remember, no game planning in these preseason games. You do want to see some players flash. So I do agree a bit on that. I was expecting a little bit more out of the defensive line. But I mean, I think as the season progresses, we'll see those guys make plays. And I actually thought Clinton Farrell had a pretty good game.
Clinton Farrell revenge game and Jordan Willis revenge game. He made a really nice play as well too. Good to see you, Jordan Willis. BNA Music, thank you for the donation, buddy. He says Kyle gets upset when quarterbacks don't attempt the throws he wants. I agree with that. Remember the Mullins play? Trey followed Kyle's process, even if it wasn't correct, but Kyle's a genius. Designed INTs is wild. A little bit to Steph's point, because she already said it basically. It was straight up just, hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are you seeing what you're supposed to see? This is the progression. This is the read. All that other stuff will come with time. The mental aspect is the stuff that you really are worried about. Again, it's going to be process over results, but I understand the sentiment, and I do agree with the top part. Kyle gets upset when quarterbacks don't attempt the throws he wants. He could literally throw a 60-yard bomb for a touchdown, and he'll bring him back to the sideline and be like, that wasn't the read. The read was over here. Like,
he literally did that to Brock Purdy last year. On the Kittle touchdown. And that was against the Raiders, I'm pretty sure.
Right, that was. I mean, he had Jawan Jennings, but he made it a little bit harder, bailed out of pocket, and hey, process results. And I think Kyle, we can firmly say Kyle's a big process guy. He's a big process guy. Ink Talk says, is post-surgery Purdy the same from last year? We're going to find out.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out. We are going to find out. I would suspect that these next 2 games, you're going to see a lot more Purdy. I wouldn't overreact to anything that you see in preseason. There's guys that rip it in preseason, can't do anything when the lights come on. You just want to see him get out there, make some throws. More importantly, I think the biggest positive from this game, everybody basically got out healthy. And that's the part that you always worry about. But I guess we should talk negatives. And I don't want to be negative, but there are some negatives. So generally, when you talk about starters playing, well, none of the starters played, but it kind of felt like Isaiah Oliver was a presumed starter, Steph, and he's out there with the second string guys. And also,
he was out there wild too.
Yeah. And also, you could look at it 2 ways. You could say, oh, wow, they have confidence in him. But if you're the starter, why do they want you out there? Is it a little bit concerning that Isaiah Oliver wasn't in the same zip code as some of these receivers when they were catching passes?
For Isaiah Oliver, yes, it's concerning because Kyle Shanahan said he's not a guaranteed starter for the 49ers. I mean, competition is good. Clearly, there's some other guys who have stepped up, who have maybe made that decision a little difficult. And I think probably a little of Isaiah Oliver maybe not playing as well as you would have expected when you signed him. Probably a little of both, because based on what we saw yesterday, I think we could see he was getting cooked by Keelan Cole. Like, come on now, you can't let that happen. So with that being said, I don't really know who would be the next guy in line that's maybe pushing him for that nickel spot. I mean, Deshaun Jameson is someone who has gotten a lot of praise, and
I think
he's one of the positives. He looked great in return duty.
As long as there's no penalties on every single return.
Yeah, that's true. Special teams as a whole may be a negative, but Deshaun Jameson could potentially, make this roster, and maybe he is pushing Oliver for that nickel spot. Also, I mean, Samuel Womack has played there in the past. I know he was playing on the outside on Sunday, so I don't know if he's the guy that they're thinking of. AJ Parker was playing at the nickel as well, and he made a few plays. So who knows? I think it's still up for interpretation who that guy is and who's pushing Isaiah Oliver. But I think Oliver is leaving some to be desired right now, and I think that's what it is.
Yeah, Samuel Womack can't play outside. It's just you saw it in the Atlanta game, and then you saw it rear his head again. Like, he's just built to play inside a little bit more, and maybe he's the guy because he was a starter last year. Maybe he's the guy to push. Again, you don't want to overreact too much, but the signs kind of tell you, right? Like, when you're looking at teams' plans, if you're saying all your starters are not going to be there, then why is Isaiah Oliver out there? Do you want him to just get reps, or because he played all of last year? Remember, his one interception was against the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo. And Kyle Shanahan said about Oliver, he isn't a guaranteed starter. He's been doing that spot a lot, but there's a lot of competition there. So I think that, again, it was kind of strange to see him out there a little bit. So other negatives, the defensive line, again, was getting pushed around. It wasn't just Javon Kinlaw. Kevin Gibbons was getting pushed around. Kerry Hyder had a very nice play. That was good as well, too. We might as well get to it, and we might as well not bury the lead. I'll let you take this first, Jake Moody.
Oh, you're going to let me take this first?
I'm going to let you take it first.
Because you're going to cook.
No, I'm not. I'm not, actually. I'm going to disappoint. I'm going to disappoint a lot of people today.
He says that, and then he's going to yell, go on a 5-minute rant talking about Moody.
I am not. You'll see. Right. I guarantee it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that is not great. 2 misses from Jake Moody.
Not great, Bob.
One of them was 40 yards or something like that. It was relatively short, doable. The other one was 58. And so that one a little bit longer, but he shanked that. We know he has the leg to hit both of these, but he missed both of them. Not great. He has been missing some in camp. I know we're impressed by, he made a 60-yarder and he had room to spare. That's great. But obviously in these game situations, you want to be able to make those. And the kicking position is a lot about the mental aspect. It's basically a one-player sport. You're not part of the football team. You're just the guy who goes out and kicks.
What? Oh wait, hold on, Steph. Why are you disparaging kickers? Are you trying to tell me that kickers aren't football players?
Hey, I didn't say that. You did.
I did not. It sounds like you're implying that kickers aren't football players. I've been very much of an advocate out there, people.
It's a very solo position. I'll say that.
I love that my brand has become getting tagged whenever a kicker does anything. I'm going to disappoint all of you. I think it's fine. I don't care. I really don't. Wow. If he makes all of them during the season, who cares? Right? I don't care, man.
So my worry, though, while I do agree with that, it is just the preseason, but my worry with kickers being that it is such a mental position to play, confidence is huge. Yeah. And if you miss, and he missed 2 in a row, and he said he wanted a third one to just kind of shake off the previous 2 and hope he would have made a third one.
That's what you want to hear?
He didn't get that opportunity. So now the last memory he has of him kicking in a game are 2 misses. And that he's going to live with that for a week and see how he does in the next preseason game. Hopefully he hits those and he could shake it off. But this is where the mental aspect of that position comes into play, and it's a huge deal. So hopefully it's not something that can snowball and go into the regular season. But yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, it's not a big deal, but bigger picture, it might be. So I want to see how he does in the second preseason game.
I'm not too worried about it, man. One thing about me is that's just a preseason game. But you must be out of your mind if you think I'm not going to get these jokes off. That's the one thing that, if you think I am not going to get these jokes off and lean into this,
you earned it. You earned
it. Yeah, come on,
man.
Earned it this time. Come on, man. No, look, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. I think the kid's got the mental makeup. It's almost like a basketball shooter, right? When you're shooting, you get a layup to go through. If he hits a 30-yarder, he'll be fine. I'm not too worried. I really genuinely am not worried about it. That was the least of my worries. But if you must be out of your mind if you think I'm not going to get these jokes off, if you don't think that I'm going to cook. I mean, I'm just going to go right to my next joke. I don't know, man. I think when you draft somebody, he's got to sit behind a guy named number 10. And I think Zane Gonzalez should start this year while Jake Moody, is trying to figure it out, because you need to see improvements in year 2. The only way for Jake Moody to improve is not to kick, it's to sit. Did I do this right? Am I doing it right? You want to see improvement in year 2 when someone sits and doesn't do anything? Yeah, and for the people that are confused, Ronnie Bell wears 10, Zane Gonzalez wears 10, Brandon Allen wears 4, Jake Moody wears 4. I think the way for Jake Moody to be a successful franchise kicker, which is also still the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, is for him to sit behind number 10 for a year so he can learn behind a veteran. I think that's the 49ers way. So I saw some comments in here about Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is going to be signed. I wouldn't worry about that too much. That's another one of my.
I saw someone trying to trade Nick Bosa in the comments.
No.
What are we doing? What are we doing here?
No. One more negative.
Uh-oh.
Cam Latu. Look, we've heard all training camp about the drops. Heard all about the drops. And David Lombardi posted Trey Lance's warm-ups from the press box. And Ronnie Bell goes out for a route, catches it. Ross Dwelly goes out, catches it. He throws one to Cam Latu over the middle. No one's there. It's air. He dropped it.
I didn't
And
even see that, dude.
yes. And I'm just like, oh no, it is in his head. It's absolutely
Yes.
in his mind. It's
Yeah.
absolutely in his mind. He makes the catch in the game. He's not protecting the ball. The ball is out. This is all in his head right now. And to your point about confidence, the Cam Latu thing is very concerning. And with the draft capital that you've invested, can you make a move like put him on the practice squad? I'm sure someone will try to snatch him up, and you can't cut him. So that means that Cam Latu might make this roster, and a really good football player is not going to make this team.
So that's what my issue has been. It's not that I've given up on Cameron Latu. I know that when they drafted him, they probably had, long-term aspirations for him. But based on what he's shown right now, it would not sit right with me if he made this roster and someone else, maybe even Braden Willis, doesn't make the 53. Like, how is that fair? Just based on where you were drafted. I get it. I said that. A lot of people were like, so is the same true about Trey Lance? It's a different topic.
It's
okay?
not the same
different topic. Different topic.
Thing.
But, the point is, yeah, it doesn't sit right with me. And I don't know what you do if you're the 49ers. I would be tempted, I know teams do this. I would be tempted to not fake an injury, but hey, he needs to go on IR. He has a hanging nail.
Well, I think what we're going to hear is Latu sustained an injury at the end of the third game, and boom, he's on IR. And someone asked too, I think in one of the donations, is Ambry going to make the team over Darrell Luter? I think they're going to try to sneak Darrell Luter on IR the entire time, as well too, to get him through this year. So there is a lane for that. But yeah, I would not be shocked if you hear Kyle Shanahan say, yeah, Latu had an injury at the end. And,
I would be fine with that. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah. And Braden Willis,
taking someone's spot.
Braden Willis has been catching passes and doing things on special teams. Mm-hmm. And you would have thought he was the third round pick. So I'm sorry. Look, that pick always fell. Yeah, exactly. Adductor injury incoming. That always felt like it was backwards. Wouldn't Braden Willis be the one that might have been taken a little bit higher? Latu always felt like it was just like the end of the draft. Yeah.
That was my issue with the pick. Yeah. It's not that I have anything against Latu, but based on where each of those guys were drafted, I just for my mental health, I'm going to continue to pretend that Braden Willis was the third round pick and Latu was the seventh rounder.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, hey, look, we love multiverses. Maybe I'll just make it up. We'll just change it out. But look, to put a wrap on this, like I said earlier, there wasn't really too much you were going to learn about this team. The Super Bowl window isn't closed now because, a bunch of depth players got pushed around by a Raiders team that came out and tried to win the Super Bowl. By the way, the Raiders are joint practicing again this week with the Rams. So they're really ramping up right now as well, too. Would have been nice to see Jimmy Garoppolo. I had to get in his name as well, too. What's up, buddy? I see you over there looking good. Came in dressed very well before the game as well, too. But, there wasn't too much you were going to learn about this team other than what is going on the 53, who has a chance to steal a spot, who did you want to see improvement from. But I would feel far worse about this game if, like, Javon Hargrave played and so did Eric Armstead and, Fred and all these guys played and all that stuff was happening. Joint practices are joint practices. It is what it is. I'm not, again, practice doesn't supersede games, but there's no reason to overreact right now, guys. Again, maybe there's concern about certain players, but not concern about this team. I don't see that. I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the same boat. I'm not concerned. There's improvements I need to see from some players in this next preseason game. I don't know at what point do we start to see some of the starters in there? Like, will that be in the second preseason game or the third? Now that things have kind of shifted, to me, it never made sense that the second game has like historically been where you play your starters. Shouldn't it be the third one? Like, because that's the closest to week one. Like, if you're going to ramp up, go with the game that's closest to week one.
when
I
when it
thought.
was four preseason games, back when I was a young boy, the dress rehearsal was the third game. And then the fourth game was just literally like a bunch of like non-starters, right? Last year, the dress rehearsal was the third game. Like, so it
Yeah,
depends on what Kyle's thinking. So I think with the way that they've kind of ramped up, training camp felt kind of light. Obviously, nobody played this week. I think you're going to see the third game be the game where you'll see the guys be out there for a half. And that's when you'll be able to gauge a little bit more. Obviously, George Kittle, they said, is not going to be back this week. That's fine. Doesn't matter. Get him to week 1. Don't care. But you're getting a lot of guys back. Dre Greenlaw is going to be back. Orenberg sounds like he's going to be back soon. Who's somebody that everybody's talking about for the third linebacker spot. But I want to get on here and calm people down a little bit, just a little. What you saw wasn't fun. I think we're all starved for football. I think we're all starved to watch this team. We're all starved to talk about this team. We're all starved to talk about actual football games. But I really can't put too much stock into what happened. I mean, if we go into week 4 and 5 and the 49ers are 4-1, we're not going to be like, man, remember when the Raiders smoked us in preseason week 1? Like, for a team that religiously under Kyle Shanahan, aside from 2019, starts slow and figures it out mid-season all the way through, you would think you guys would have, well, not you guys, anybody who's panicked. I think you would remember, like, hey, this team's pretty loaded. They'll be fine. Like, it's just a preseason game at this point. But without this preseason game, what would we be talking about? Just the quarterback position and hypotheticals and the things that people say. So, Steph,
we're still talking about this.
We're still talking about the quarterback, baby. We can't get away from it, baby. All right. That'll do it for us. Steph, thank you so much. Make sure you guys are following Steph at Steph49K on Twitter, me at Jason Aponte 2103 on Twitter. Make sure you're following the Gold Standard Podcast Network on Instagram, on Twitter, and you're following the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your audio podcasts, and subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast YouTube channel. Subscribe to Jason Aponte and Steph Sanchez's YouTube channel as well, too. They heard they do pretty good work over there as well, too. So thank you guys for tuning in. For Steph, for Jason, we're out here.
Peace.